Freethinker Radio. I'm Micah, here with...
Yo, what's up? This is Derek.
I hear other people, but I don't hear...
Is there other people here?
Lovely, lovely.
All right.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in to
Welcome.
Freethinker Radio today. That was
Welcome.
so soon the truth. I don't hear Derek.
Can you not hear me? I can hear myself.
Oh, I hear everything now.
I kind of have a cold, so I
can
might
hear
sound a
you
little
at
weird.
home. Call us at 713-526-8737.
713-526-8737. So,
We
yeah,
want to
we're
talk
here.
about food.
We got a lot to talk about today. There's things going on in the city of Houston. There's stuff happening across
Besides
the
food?
country, in the world. Lots of things happening. Local events, local music, of course. Crazy things as well. And your phone calls, as we mentioned. You can call in at any point in the next 2 hours. This is 2 hours of...
And there's both of us
Us.
here, so we'll probably...
Both
chances
of
are
us.
increased on us seeing this light up in here for the phone. So we really would love to talk to y'all. We were getting a lot of calls on the FM, getting calls on the HDs, increased. MOD out there,
That's
long-time
cool.
caller. Other people out there want to call, talk about events coming up this weekend. We got some time for that over here on the HD. We got time to get into the stories a little bit more. So if you got some comments on the stories, we'd love to see that phone line light up right as we end one of these news stories, then we can, get some reflection on that.
Yeah, for sure. It's always good to hear from the people of Houston. Well, even if you're not in Houston, wherever you're listening from,
Yeah,
it's always
people.
cool. There's just the people, you guys out there who are listening for some reason or another through the internet or through your phone or on your computer, or maybe even if you have a car with the HD
We actually
radio.
The number of listeners has more than doubled since we came on the air 10 minutes ago.
Cool.
Yeah.
Whoa. I don't
Yeah.
know what that means exactly, but
It means
let's leave it a
people are
mystery.
listening to-
Let's leave it a mystery.
It means people are listening to Freethinker Radio, and we want to thank
That
you
does
for
mean that.
listening.
I do believe that's true.
Yeah, thanks. And we will be here also Friday FM at 3. So I'm going to mention that we're back in spring and the farmers market's still going. It's
Yes.
actually going on this weekend. It's going to be a crazy weekend in the Heights. I got the farmers market going on, lots of vendors, and springtime.
What day is it?
This Saturday, the 16th, and then that same day is Groove and Vibe over at Dan Electro's, all kinds of bands. I'll be talking about that later. One other thing.
Where's that farmer's market, though?
Where is it? Oh, good question. Where is it? It's in the Heights, man. I told you. Oh,
I
is
know,
that-
but that's a big place. I don't. Is it 20th Street? Is it
No,
11th
no,
Street? Is it...
But this is the Epicurean, which means the top of the line farmers market in the Heights.
Okay,
This is the
okay.
one to get to. So yeah, it's over there at 1300 Heights Boulevard. You can probably hear the live music. We got live music there. I know because I'm over there supporting that and helping get artists that we spin here on Freethinker Radio both shared up on MC style and live. So I do want to also mention that we did get 3 CDs in our mailbox today. So that's pretty
Cool.
exciting. But yeah, I love the farmers market. Sorry to bounce around like that, but I love the farmers market because it's just like that. You go from one booth to another. There's people with honey. There's people with cage-free chicken food, chickens and eggs and all kinds of stuff that you don't always, you pay a lot for in the grocery stores, and you pay a little bit for it here, but it's going directly to supporting this. It's here in the community. There's not a lot of extra, fuss and frills with it. It's just good stuff made by creative people that care about what they're doing. Wow, what a world to
always
be in
cool.
if we could all, vibe into that just for a little while in our lives. And I thank everyone for letting us do that here as DJs on KPFT, because obviously we might have something to say. You might not agree with us, but we are going to say it.
It's always fun saying things and listening to other people say things back, especially when things that you say, things that they say, don't agree with each other.
Mason, a former guest here in the band Three White Doves, is going to be playing Wednesday night at Down Electros, along with 2 pretty heavy touring bands. I'm going to play at least one of them today. So that'll be going on Wednesday at Down Electros in the Heights. So I don't know, maybe things are starting to happen in the Heights a little bit too. I don't know. I guess they always have, but it's been nice lately. I've been getting out to Down Electros a little bit more, and it's, with the loss of Fitz and some of that stuff in the neighborhood, it's kind of nice to see, one of the old establishments kind of reinvigorated. They put more money in there, and Terry, who worked sound over at Walters, he works the bigger shows over there, so that's nice.
Where
at Dan's, so
Oh,
he'll
okay,
be
cool.
probably working Saturday at the Groove and Vibe that's out there with there'll be merchants at that, so there's all kinds of ways you can plug in and spend money in your community, empower people around, and get some good stuff for yourself or loved ones. Another good thing you can get for yourself and loved ones is KPFT. There's all kinds of ways to contribute. We are listener-supported radio, and if you want to know more about that, please visit kpft.org and look at ways you can contribute.
For sure. So, yeah, I don't really know much of what's going on locally because I've been gone for a little bit, as we were talking about.
You've been having fun.
came back on Friday. It was my first reappearance on Freethinker Radio. A Friday on the FM side, as Micah said, we're there from 3 to 4 on Friday afternoons. So this is my first show back on the HD2 side, and that's cool because we have 2 hours, and it just feels a little less rushed on this side, I guess, because there's not as much pressure for some reason.
It feels so much less pressure.
Yeah, and like on Mondays are kind of a slow day here, so we're like in the we're not in the dark, but the studio next to us is in the dark.
It really
we're
is.
kind of alone here, so it's cool. I feel like we're alone, but we're not alone because there's people listening, and there's people here in the building. We're definitely not alone. Okay, don't be weird about it.
Yeah, stop being weird.
But it's cool to just have more time to connect with you guys and hopefully take some phone calls at
713-526.
Hold on, 526-8737 if you want to call in. But yeah,
if you want to
fun.
talk about pizza.
Okay, who wants to get pizza?
Yeah.
I love a good pizza.
Pizza was good because speaking of fund drives and funding the station, Star Pizza did throw pizzas in while you were not here. And I feel like
I didn't
left
get to
out.
eat Star pizzas.
Well, other people here did. I just saw the boxes.
Oh, but I still missed out, is what you're telling me.
Basically, but so did I, so I don't get to one-up you on it. But nonetheless, I do feel like we have a lot more time, and it's probably because we get... I think we probably believe that we get an hour and a half worth of stories that we could cover easily. We probably could talk about them a lot more, but the point is, we get over to FM side, it goes so fast between jumping on there, and then we start a minute into the show, and then boom, we take callers because they're calling like mad. It's lighting up like Christmas tree.
It's really cool, but yeah, it takes a lot of time.
And it's just, yeah, you would get through maybe
like to
three
talk,
stories, maybe 3 stories at best, and we hardly get to play as much music. So over here, it's just a little more chill. We get to reflect more on the stories. So what have you seen much in the local news, Derek? We should probably ought to get into some real stuff.
I got some stuff happening. I've been looking up the news while we've been ranting around.
You were doing something? You were multitasking?
I am multitasking. All right, so let me just tell you a little bit about what I found here. So this is kind of just interesting note, I guess, because it relates to the election that is going to take place later this year in November here in Houston, Harris County, as well as other places, that the Texas Secretary of State has authorized Harris County, which is the county that Houston resides in, to implement the county-wide polling place program, which will allow Harris County voters to be able to cast ballots at any polling location on Election Day. So this means that Harris County residents will no longer be limited to their assigned precincts. Instead, they'll be allowed to vote anywhere in the county.
Oh, so you could vote on the way home from work instead of having to get home and make it home in time and all that sort of...
Yeah. It says County Clerk Diane Trotman announced on Thursday that Texas Secretary of State David Whitley has authorized Harris County to implement the county-wide polling place program, which allows eligible counties to establish non-precinct-based Election Day voting centers. The centers are similar to those already used by the county during early voting pyramids, with plans to add more locations. So, yeah, this is basically going to make it easier for people who want to vote and to do it quicker, and I guess, yeah, as Micah said, not have to rush home after you get work to try to make that happen. So that's, I think, a win in the sense of people who want to express themselves through voting.
It at least opens it up.
All the options they should have. So that's kind of interesting.
It doesn't seem like it would cost anything more, and it opens everything up.
It doesn't really seem to.
I don't see how it could really be exploited. I mean, you already have to have an ID, right?
So then this one is kind of like some other local politics that I think are important to talk about because they relate to some things we've been talking about off air. So Dwight Boykins, he is one of the city councilmen, and he has been kind of going back and forth with the mayor. I saw this actually while I was out of the country, while I was listening to Freethinker Radio and just kind of watching news happening in Houston, that there was a city council meeting where Mayor Sylvester Turner, who we've questioned about various issues, I've tried to talk to him about 5G. He kind of runs away from that, and different issues.
It's the fastest G.
Who has recently announced that he is running for re-election in this year's mayoral race, again to take place in November. Dwight Boykins and him have been going back and forth, as well as other council members, over Proposition B. And you guys have heard us talk about this before, but if you're not familiar, it's basically measure, the proposition that the city of Houston voted on and during the last election and approved, which would give the firefighters a raise. And it was fought by the police union and the mayor and different people. Well, the people voted for it, and the mayor has been resisting it in every possible way, and now it's become a legal fight, and it's playing out, and the city is supposed to implement it by January 1st of this year, and they still haven't set anything up. So it's been like a fight between some of the council members and the mayor and the people, And so there was this video where Councilmember Dwight Boykins basically went back and forth with the mayor and said, like, this is not a dictatorship or tyranny or something along the lines.
Did the mayor disagree?
And the mayor definitely disagreed, and he got all upset. We should find that clip if we can, because it's really awesome. I'm going to see if we can find it, because it's important, and I'm going to put that into a video to show people really what this mayor's about. Because for one, he says in this, he's like, look, I'm the CEO of Houston, okay? And then whenever Dwight Boykins tries to give him a compliment and says, like, hey, I supported Sylvester Turner, the mayor Sylvester Turner interrupts and says, hey, it's mayor. I'm the mayor. And Dwight Boykins is just like, what? Are you seriously? What do you think you can do something to me? Like, what is that a threat? And then the other council member, Brenda Stardig, who has been kind of sort of supportive on the 5G issue, or at least asking questions, she kind of interjects and says, was that a threat towards the other council member? I mean, it just got out of hand, and it was all over this fight over Proposition B at Houston City Council, and it happened at some point in February while I was gone. There was a clip that some people put together, and that made the local news. So then last week, Boykins, who's the one who I was just discussing. Oh yeah, let's hear this little report.
I haven't found it.
Okay, well, so this just last week, Dwight Boykins, he basically tagged what's known as tagging the city council agenda, and a tag can be used as a way to delay a vote or to delay going over an agenda in general. And so he basically tagged the agenda for the next 2 weeks, and he says he's doing this as a power that the council members have to delay the vote for a week.
They actually have some power? This
is, I guess, they're using the limited power that they do have. And the items will have to wait until the council reconvenes on March 20th. Boykins said that the tags were a response to Mayor Sylvester Turner's refusal to swear in 68 firefighter cadets as debate continues over how the city will pay for the firefighters' voter-mandated pay raises. And Mayor Pro Tem Ellen Cohen called the move an insult to the public. And another council member said Boykins should not abuse his power. And the delay, according to Houston Public Media, is a symptom of what has become a, quote, near crisis at City Hall as pressure mounts for council members to find a solution and implement the pay raises. At the same time, Houston remains wrapped up in a lawsuit over the ballot measure, and negotiations with the firefighters union to phase in the raises appear to have broken down. And yeah, so that's also going along with one of the reasons the mayor's fighting it, besides kind of having a close alliance with the police union, the police in Houston in general, is that Houston has a huge deficit and is in debt, and the mayor is saying, like, we're already headed in a bad direction, like Houston can't balance its budget, and now you guys are trying to get us to give these firefighters raises. And I don't know if that's a legitimate argument on his part or not, but I do know that I don't know if you've read any about that, Mike, about the city being in debt and having a huge deficit.
No, really?
Yeah, the city of Houston is an
Wow,
oil-rich
that's
city.
shocking.
So there's a lot of things going on, I think, in the city politics,
You're
which
right,
is
though.
interesting.
I'm sorry to be so flip, because you did just say something in this rich city that we're in debt. That ought to tell you something, because there's a lot of people here, and we don't get a lot of stuff. Right? I mean, we don't get a lot of stuff. Occasional raid gone wrong, execution style, some things like that. Some, being kept in jail with a disbalanced sentencing thing, stuff like that. But we don't get a lot of services, right? I mean, don't we pay for a lot of these, like the water, and don't we pay property taxes for the schools? And don't we get, so why are we in debt so bad?
Like I said, I saw this. This is just from a couple months back in December. Houston School District projects $76 million deficit for next school year. And then in 2016, Houston Public Media reported that one of the reasons the mayor was fighting this same fight, Proposition B, is because he's seeking to close a $160 million deficit that the city has. So the city is...
That's a lot of millions.
And a couple $100 million in debt, and the school district is projected to hit $76 million in deficit.
That's a whole other thing.
So there's all kinds of stuff going on with the city and with debt, and so this is one of the reasons the mayor is claiming to fight the raise of the firefighters.
Well, how else? I'm sure he's under all kinds of pressure, but it just seems like if you got this whole section of administrative executives that are doing relatively the same function, the will of the people is there, and you really do have this overburdening debt. I don't know. Could you just offhand maybe think of 3 to 5 things that we could save money on and be able to still do the will of the people? Because it sounds like, we talk about a strong mayor, this mayor, not only sometimes not just this mayor, but often the Houston mayors have been seen not caring about what city council says, not caring about what people says. And now this is kind of right up in the face of a vote. And he's using something that people do care about, like debt, to say that's why we can't do it, rather than looking, because he's in charge, right? He always makes sure he says he's the CEO, right? So he's in charge. The buck stops here. Why can't he just make some other cuts? Why can't he just find the money? Come on. I know they spend a lot of money on a lot of junk.
We don't know exactly the numbers. I filed open records request to the city to find out how much money their contracts are with the Verizon to do the 5G rollout, but we know it's probably in the millions.
And you get a better deal if you are a 5G champion.
Well, he's a wireless 5G champion, so maybe he got a good deal, but it seems like it's going to be in the millions of dollars.
You shouldn't be in debt if you would.
Well, think about this. If you're going after 5G, because just another thing, kind of piece of information, is just last week the mayor announced the Smart City Council, right? So this is as part of moving Houston towards being the smart city. He wants us to be number one in the country.
What were those things out in the neighborhoods, smart neighborhoods? Now we're getting smart city. Are these different, or are they all linked up? Remember the smart neighborhoods?
Super neighborhoods.
That's it.
Super neighborhoods.
Not smart.
Super neighborhoods are the way for the people to have a voice in their more specific neighborhood. If you never heard about that, look it up. I didn't know about it till recently.
So you got super neighborhoods, and then you got smart cities.
Yeah, and smart city is one of the things that they're turning Houston into being. And they have if you look up HoustonTX.gov/smart city, you'll see a link to the page about this that goes into depth about what they have planned for it. And my point here is that the city is trying to spend millions and millions of dollars on becoming this latest smart city, racing towards 5G and the Internet of Things when people have questions about it. And they are just willing to spend all kinds of money that we don't know how much. Those contracts haven't been made public at this point. People are having questions regarding their privacy, the safety, the health concerns, and yet they're rushing towards that. And they also, of course, could save money by putting a halt on something or just saying, hey, let's study it a little bit longer since people have questions, and because we need money to pay these firefighters.
So I imagine there's a lot of cities in debt, I mean, we see it. We've talked about it on the news here about some of the other cities in debt. And then you have the waves, the wireless waves in their territory, right? And you got a federal government that says they can't charge what they want on these waves, right? Is that correct? I mean, so at the same time, I mean, if they really could do what they wanted with their airspace like that, if it is their airspace or the people's airspace or whatever, then it seems like that could be a source of revenue to just, throwing some crazy ideas into it. I mean, it is Free Thinker Radio, no? Sorry.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So lots of stuff to think about. There's a lot of money things going on. There's a couple other kind of stories about Houston that are happening, Houston and Texas, that I think that relate to the national issues as well. We'll get into those in just a moment. One of the things I did want to mention, actually just thought about this, I'm glad I did, as far as local things happening in Houston, I just touched on 5G a little bit and some of the concerns about that. There's a group that you can find on Facebook, a group in a Facebook page called Houstonians Concerned with 5G. If you just look up facebook.com/Houstonians Concerned with 5G, or just search that, you should find the group and the page. And there's an event under both of those this Thursday night at Midtown Bar and Grill of West Gray at 6 p.m. There's going to be a meeting with Houstonians Concerned with 5G talking about that very issue, 5G, the fifth generation of cellular technology. And we've played interviews here before with ACLU attorneys talking about the security and privacy concerns. We played an interview with Dr. Theodora Scarola of the Environmental Health Trust talking about some of the health concerns, and both of those can be found on YouTube and probably still in the archives if they're still there, I think. And yeah, so we've talked a lot about this issue, and I've received dozens of emails from people all around the country, but really even just more concentrated here in Houston, people who are looking for ways to get involved, ideas like the super neighborhoods, or even using their HOA or neighborhood committee or something as a way.
Using anything.
Anything. And so we're going to be getting together Thursday night at 6 p.m. at the Midtown Bar and Grill to talk about strategies and ideas and ways to do something about that. And the interesting thing that I just want to mention as an idea to anybody who's out there listening and has these same concerns about 5G and maybe wants to do something about it locally, I just saw a story just a couple of days ago about a small town in California called Danville, where Danville City Council denies permit for hotly debated Verizon cell facility. And this basically relates to 5G in a way, because in order for 5G to roll out, one of the things we've talked about is they're going to be tens of thousands of new, what they're calling small cells installed, which are like cellular devices the size of a backpack or a refrigerator or on a giant pole. They put them in different ways, and they're going to have to be installed every 500 or so feet for the 5G network to work, for the Internet of Things to work. So people have been resisting this. They don't want them near schools. There's stories of firefighters in certain cities saying, like, no, you can't build these on the towers connected to the fire station because we have concerns. Some people have fought them because they're going to be built near schools or campuses or daycare centers and things like that. So Danville came together, and the people, there's an organization, some local group, let me see if I can find the name, but basically just a local group of activists. Danville Citizens for Responsible Growth. They've been fighting for this for about 6 months or more, it seems like, and they went through the city council. They filed an appeal challenging the city council's decision to allow the installation of one of the first small cells in their community. And again, this is a smaller community, so they were able to rally real locally and make this happen. And eventually this was brought to a vote, and the Danville Town Council last week voted 4-1 to deny a land use permit for a Verizon small cell wireless facility. And this is pretty cool. So they came together, each of them spoke and said different things about why they were fighting against it. And basically, many of them were concerned with health, many of them were concerned with the placement of it, but none of that really mattered. They all voiced their opinion, but the true official argument was that Verizon didn't have the correct permitting for the land use. So it's the city and the people trying to use whatever tools they have to try to slow them down, because as one of the lawyers in another local battle I found said, if you try to fight 5G or similar technologies based on the health argument in court, you will lose. That's what this lawyer basically said. He advised anybody who's going to take these issues up and try to fight the city or the cellular companies in court to fight them on like permitting and improper use, because legally the FCC rule that was passed last September says that you can't, localities and municipalities can't fight it according to price or health or
these things don't matter.
Yeah, you can't you can't study it, you can't do those things, but if you can say that they didn't get the right permit, or it's not it doesn't look pretty enough, it's not environment, just there's different arguments you can make. So that's basically what they did.
It's offensive.
But they actually won on this. There was only one vote against it. But this is interesting, though, what their mayor said. Mayor Robert Storer said, "We've made a lot of difficult decisions over the years, and this one is right up there in my top 3. But this is exactly why somebody elects us to do the right things. We've lost local control, and this says, you know what? We are sick of this, and we're not going to just sit here and be bullied over. We say no. We play our cards out. We've been in lawsuits." No. He says, we play our cards out. We've been in lawsuits before, because he's expecting a lawsuit from Verizon because they're denying.
Because they own it, right? It's a corporatist regime. They own it.
So the land use permit for the cell facility, which is owned by Verizon, was approved by the Danville Public Commission back in October, and that's when the people were first fighting. And then they were able to raise enough awareness and to get an appeal filed. And then there was a 5-hour meeting just about a month ago where I guess they got everybody in town to show up and speak.
That's what you do.
And then they came back for this vote, and more people came to speak. And yeah, so they voted against it. But I think it's pretty cool that the mayor is even saying, like, look, we've lost local control, because that's the truth. That's what this FCC ruling that we've been talking about, that they passed back in September of 2018, took away local control, state control, and put the federal control of the rollout not only in the hands of the federal government, but also in big wireless, in Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, Huawei, and these big companies, what is the other one, LTE, and things like that. These companies, they have control, and the companies behind them, like here in Houston, Crown Castle. This is one of the biggest companies that's involved. They're based in Houston, and they're involved in the building the infrastructure, the small cells, and these towers and devices that 5G will operate on. They're based in Houston, and they're making tons of money. They've partnered with the federal, local, and state governments in various ways. But it seems like in Houston, the mayor is actively supporting it. That's the difference. Is like this mayor over here in Danville saying, like, hey, we've lost local control. We should stop this. I had a friend go to Orlando City Council and speak about 5G, and their city council said, we have the same concerns. We appreciate you guys, but unfortunately we can't do anything about it because of this federal rule. We need you guys to keep making a deal about it. So other cities, there's an admittance that the federal government has control, and there's a resistance to it. But here in Houston, the mayor says, I love 5G. He's given the 5G Wireless Champion Award and partners with Verizon CEO Hans Vestberg, who I questioned about the privacy and security concerns and claims he has no idea about them. So my point is that there are ways to fight locally. I've also saw another fight where a lawyer was suggesting to take it on the county level, that the city government won't do anything about it. You have to go at the county level. What would that look like, Micah, though? Where would you, because if there's a city council, where would you go? Where do the people go speak on? Is there a county council? Like, where do the people go express their opinions on?
Probably to begin, all kinds of places, right? The tax assessor, the courthouse. My goodness. I think a lot of different counties have different structures. Some have like a county chamber of commerce, and like we were talking about earlier, use things at your disposal, right? And if things such as permits, stuff like that, so it can get in the way, then obviously county courts, things like that. That sounds pretty interesting. I was just now looking up over here, if I could, try to find the Houston budget, and see what the expenditures are and such, and I found some stuff. There's a lot of money being spent by this city, I'll tell you that much. Goodness.
Look, if you want to get involved in fighting 5G locally or just learning more about this, then definitely come out, because this is what why I think that
Midtown Bar and Grill,
that this example of what Danville did is pretty simple. I mean, again, it's a much smaller place, but one of the things we were talking about.
What's the drawback? I mean, what can be the drawback, right? What can be the drawback of looking at this stuff? You take a little bit longer to get a refrigerator that tells you that you need eggs. I mean, really, have you thought about that, Derek? What could be a drawback of slowing it down? Are there any drawbacks that you could think of?
Well, no, I think that it's really just a reputation thing. Like I said, the mayor has said that he wants to be number one. He wants to beat New York and Dallas and Austin, and they can't say that Houston was number one and these kinds of things. And he now, as I mentioned, has started a smart city council. So it seems that he is determined to get Houston towards being the first smart city out there, or at least one of the first, rolling out 5G, having autonomous vehicles, and all these things that, again, you can find at houstontx.gov/smartcity, where it shows the plans that they have. And some of it definitely looks like it could be used in a surveillance manner, which is a big problem that we heard from an ACLU attorney about the 5G Internet of Things, is that there are privacy and security concerns for the average person, that these smart cities don't turn into surveillance cities.
16% of the city's budget, over $393 million in 2019, is used to service debt.
So you have, 1/5 of the budget going towards debt, some other percentage of it going towards turning the city into a smart city. If you have questions about this, come down to Midtown Bar and Grill Thursday night.
Yeah, and then you got an expenditure breakdown, too, of the city here, if you go to houstontexas.gov's budget. It's really interesting stuff, public works, solid waste, etc. But then you have to get deeper into what each one is, right? Legal, blah, blah, blah. But the police department, $871 million. Fire department, $503 million. So, what are you talking about here? Municipal courts, $30 million. Emergency center. General services, $43 million. Good stuff. Hey, so what, you want to tell us a little bit more about 5G? Are you done with that? I take it you're done. You told us where to go.
I'm good. Yeah, that's basically, I just wanted to give an example of how this is being fought locally. And that
you gave a couple, right? And the one in, what was it, Danville. The one in Danville was interesting. I think it's kind of interesting also that the mayor has to come out, or not has to, but comes out and says, obviously he has to take a stand on making this decision instead of just, this is the decision we made. He has to almost feel like he has to justify it or something. That's pretty weird. I guess there's pressure on him. If the people were behind you, though, what difference does that other money pressure matter? Huh?
Yeah, and that's it's interesting that to see that fight on that local level. So we'll see where that goes. And as I said, this is, if people are willing to stand up to the federal government for, say, cannabis, like, hey, we want to allow cannabis here, and they know that the federal government says it's illegal, then maybe they should be willing to question things like this. And speaking, look, if this is a nice segue. Oh, I made that happen. I didn't even think about it. Cannabis in Texas, Micah, do you think it's coming? Do you think I
think there is cannabis in Texas, yes.
Oh, my God, you're right. Well, legally.
Yeah.
Well, that's not even legally.
I think it's
decriminally.
I just think I think it's just like a matter of time, because of the fact, I think it's scary because, we have all this medical industrial complex here, so we're probably not going to be free like some of the other states. We probably still have some sort of oppressive regime on top of us, like a medical industrial legal, like where you can go get a script so somebody gets to decide whether you can get it. Can you imagine if alcohol was sold that way? You have to get a script to go get this thing that can knock you out and make you crash your car, and everybody knows it. So I think if Texans were pro-freedom, and everything, then they'd recognize that, individuals are responsible for their actions, and that consumption of a plant on your own premises should be legal. Like, come on, who you hurting? Too much smoke in there.
Yeah, well, look, this one's coming from the Texas Observer, and it says, third time's the charm, marijuana decriminalization, not legalization, gets another chance in Texas. The first marijuana reform bill heard in committee this session will downgrade possession of an ounce of civil defense to a civil defense and fine of up to $250. Why even a fine?
I mean, it's so cruel and unusual.
But see, police chiefs from Plano, North Richlands Hills, and Grand Prairie, Texas, told the Texas House Committee last Monday that cannabis is a dangerous gateway drug that leads to violent crime. In the same hearing, David Sloan, a 60-year-old criminal defense attorney from Fort Worth, said it was a shame that he'd arrested people for cannabis possession during his tenure as a law enforcement officer decades ago. Those arrests were, quote, low-hanging fruit that he wasn't proud of, and he said he was Sloan, who was a former lieutenant at the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office in northern Texas. He says, I didn't see the harm these people had committed to society. My practice is over 90% defense of cannabis cases. It's insane for me to come in here asking for you to reduce the penalties on this. It's going to put me out of business, but you know what? It's the right thing to do. He was one of more than a dozen witnesses who testified in favor of House Bill 63, which was filed by Texas State Rep. Joe Moody of El Paso. And that's interesting. Why? Because El Paso is right there on the border where the drug war is strong, so he probably understands that decriminalizing things like cannabis would ideally really affect the black market and maybe take some of the violence out of it once it's
one of the reasons it's
decriminalized.
If you want to look at it as a gateway drug to violence in any sort of form, is because it's illegal and people go to criminals to get it sometimes. If people could just grow it themselves, not everybody would, but it could be dealt with either that way or dealt with the way it's dealt with in these other states, or the way tobacco's dealt with, or even the way booze is dealt with. I mean, so it's ridiculous. Come on.
So this is a pretty big jump, even though it's still like crappy, I think. But it said like this bill, House Bill 63, would downgrade possession of an ounce of cannabis to a Class B, or from a Class B misdemeanor, which carries up to 6 months in jail, to a civil offense with a fine of up to $250, which does not include a criminal record. So basically, they fine you $250.
I mean, come on, you're gonna
take your weed. And
you're running out of funding to all levels of government, and you're gonna take tax-paying, productive citizens that were smoking a joint at a concert or something, and threaten them with 6 months of jail. Well, look at it this way: you're gonna get either people that lose their jobs, or you're gonna get people who comply and go ahead and plead.
That it changed it. What it said was that it changed from 6 months in jail to $250. So it went from that. Now it's the 6 months of jail is not happening. It's just $250 fine and no criminal record. So that's pretty. I mean, yeah, it's still I think silly that they're even fining you $250, but
and I'm sure the fine money goes to something like Crime Stoppers or
like
something.
Big Pharma.
Yeah, the crime money probably goes to Big Pharma that's over there processing weed in those states to give it to you on a
modified
script.
Cannabis.
Yeah.
So this was the third filing by this House rep, and yeah, it's interesting. It says the Nonpartisan Legislative Budget Board estimates that the legislation would save the state $2.6 million per year on policing of cannabis like this and jailing people and housing them. $2.6 million per year. Imagine that. So they passed that this year.
And that's not considering stuff like you arrest someone, you drive them back to jail, right? They ain't taking that time. You see what I'm saying? That's just the monetary expense, like, of one part of it.
That's interesting. We'll see if it passes. That would be, I don't know, I can't really see Texas decriminalizing, but I do think it is like inevitable, because I've mentioned this before. A couple of years ago, there was the first ever cannabis business conference that took place in downtown Houston and at the George R. Brown Convention Center, the huge convention center. And it was like, oh, wow. Like, to me, it's like, okay, all these smart, business savvy people are meeting downtown Houston because they know the writing's on the wall. And Harris County has already decriminalized where Houston is. up to an ounce for like the first person. I think it's like, again, a step in the right direction, just leave the people alone kind of thing. But I don't think Texas is backwards as some people might think, that Texas would be one of the last places to, decriminalize cannabis or something like that. There's a lot of independents and people who want to make money in Texas too, and people are seeing what's happening in Colorado and other places as far as the industry boom, and there are people ready to start business in Texas, and there's a lot of land that could be turned into hemp growing and cannabis and
your yard.
A lot of opportunity. So yeah.
What is it? Grow gardens, not yards or something?
Yeah. And the last one I have here is actually about hemp. State Senate bill here in Texas 116 would allow Texans to grow hemp.
Wow, that doesn't even get you high even.
Yep. Agricultural Commissioner Sid Miller is among the backers for legalization. Unfortunately, this isn't decriminalization like the cannabis story we just talked about. It is legalization, but it's still a step. It says that they kind of tell the story of some people who've been involved in this a company called Lumen, a company that makes farm-to-bottle hemp elixirs using cold-pressed hemp mixed with herbs like ginger and turmeric. And this company, along with Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller, is among those who are pushing for State Senate Bill 116, which would allow Texans to grow hemp, which, of course, is a part of the cannabis plant, but it doesn't get you high. And just talks about the quality. If you don't know the history of hemp, you should dig into it. You should learn all about it, because it can be used for clothes, for, a million different things, like shoes, as a fabric. Hemp is also a food source, and it can be, has been, and will be. Very useful, amazing plant, and also could be used as forms of fuel. There's really so many things when you look at hemp that it could replace and change the world in a lot of different ways. But yeah, it's been illegal. The government's been saying, no, you can't do that.
You can't use this thing and make rope and make a...
You thought you were free.
But you can. You can do that.
You can, but you better watch out.
You might get arrested for hemp.
But in 2014, a farm bill passed allowing states to start researching hemp, with the assistance of universities and under close oversight. Now, after the passing of the 2018 farm bill, any state can legally grow hemp as long as the state doesn't have existing legislation against it. Thank you. So an organization called Vote Hemp helped draft the federal hemp legislation, and now they're working with Texas and other states to legalize hemp. The Texas Senate bill has bipartisan support. And as I said, Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller said he doesn't know if it's ready to pass, but he thinks he gives it support, says it's a little incomplete, but we're working on a more comprehensive bill. And so we could be at a point where good old government gives us permission to grow hemp. And I think this also might be industrial. That's the other thing, is it's always like one step, right? So it's like, oh no, there's industrial hemp is now free. So if you're a business, industrial business,
10,000 hectares,
then you can grow hemp. But no, not if you're just a regular old person. You can't be doing that.
Yeah, you might make some macrame.
But
Can't have that renegade macrame out there. Who's gonna? We might start competing with China or something.
So like hemp. Cannabis could be coming to Texas. That's pretty cool. I think it's not the only issue that matters. Like some folks are single issues about those kinds of things, like weed passing. It's like, okay, cool. That is definitely good financially. It could be business for lots of different people. Decriminalization is the way to go. But there's also just so many things happening that it's hard to get stuck on that.
Yeah, totally.
This one, though, Micah, I want to hear your thoughts on this, and maybe some callers at 713-526-8737. This is one of those Texas connects to the national conversation at the moment. And Airbnb, the home kind of room rental application website, Airbnb, Airbed and Breakfast, is the latest target of Texas's anti-BDS crusade. And this gets into some interesting conversations as far as the criticism of Israel, which has often, and including recently, been labeled as anti-Semitic. People who criticize the policies of the state of Israel or the government of Israel, and people who call for the BDS movement, which is boycott, divest, and sanction, a movement that targets Israel for its treatment of Palestinians and just human rights violations in general. So Texas has blacklisted an American company, Airbnb, for, quote, opposing Israel. Using the power of its purse, Texas is sanctioning Airbnb for purportedly ceding to pressure from the BDS movement activists. And it says in November, Airbnb announced that it would ban the listing of rentals and the settlements of Israel, which most of the international community view as illegal in Israel-occupied West Bank. The move prompted fiery backlash from allies of Israel, including Texas Republicans, who claimed that the company was giving in to radical activists. Texas Senator Ted Cruz says that Airbnb had, quote, contributed to the rising tide of anti-Semitism that we've seen happening all over the world. They've caved to the pressure from the anti-Israel boycott movement, which promotes falsehoods in its campaigns against the world's only Jewish state. And on Friday, Texas Comptroller Glenn Hager officially added Airbnb to its blacklist of alleged foes of Israel, which is the state's fourth largest trading partner. Israel and Texas, big trading partners. The list includes 3 other companies, 2 based in Norway and 1 in the UK. And this comes, of course, after 2017 when Texas passed, this is so crazy because it's kind of the same thing happening on the national level now. 2017, Texas passed legislation that prohibited the state from contracting with companies or individuals that have or will boycott Israel. Think about that.
Have or will. You got to better know.
A company, so the government saying it is illegal for companies or individuals to contract with the state who have or will boycott Israel in their past.
And you thought you were free.
That's pretty crazy. And the reason I say that this kind of relates to the national story is because now Airbnb is being penalized or sanctioned by the state of Texas for saying that they would support, this movement against Israel, which, by the way, whether you agree with it or not, isn't anti-Semitic. I mean, we should just make that clear because that's really a disturbing thing that we've seen happen quite a bit, where people who question, just the loose language in general, but let's say that people who question Israel in this specific case called anti-Semitic. And there's actually, I think she's a senator, the newly elected, I don't want to missay her name, there it is, Ilhan Omar, who is, I think, was the first woman that was elected, a Palestinian woman, I believe she's Palestinian, and she's had a lot of criticism, but basically people have come to her support and people have come to attack her because she did the same thing. She spoke out against Israel and basically tweeted out saying that there was like a pressure in D.C. for her to, get in line and support Israel, and her being attacked as anti-Semitic in the media and various people coming to her aid, various people attacking her again. But all of she's really doing was just kind of reading over the same things we were just talking about. Just people who want to boycott and divest and sanction Israel, whether you agree with those strategies or not. Again, it's not anti-Semitic to criticize Israel. And as far as talking about like people afraid of Russian influence, I've always thought more and more about what about Saudi or Israeli influence, because these are countries that, that the president's freaking kissing the hands of the Saudi prince. And
we don't have to worry about these things, because you know what the influence is? Their own whack ideas. Look, we got our own whack people.
Well, think about this. The military budget is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And Trump just announced his 2020 campaign. Yay. The only thing that grew on this campaign was the military budget. Everything else shrank, right? And part of that military budget is giving money and support to Israel. It's this country that just gets massive amount of support. And for some reason, people do not like when they get questioned it.
They got electrolytes.
So, again, because of Ilhan Omar, this congresswoman speaking out, this Democratic congresswoman speaking out about Israel, the House on Thursday night passed a non-binding, for some reason they felt this necessary, a non-binding Democratic resolution condemning anti-Semitism, white supremacy, Islamophobia, and other forms of bigotry. And the final tally on this non-binding Democratic resolution that they just felt the need to pass was 477 to 23, 234 Democrats and 173 Republicans voting yes. The resolution does not specifically mention Representative Ilhan Omar, who's been attacked for speaking up against Israel, but that's how the way it's been perceived, is that people were seeing this as an anti-Omar resolution that was transformed into a broader anti-hate resolution. And my point with bringing all this up is that it's just crazy that we're at a place where the United States federal government and the state governments are passing bills that say you can't criticize somebody, or criticize a nation or a government because it's an ally, or because it's racist, or it's anti-Semitic, or it's because it's hate speech, or just things like that. I don't like that.
Well, guess what?
What do you think about that?
I'm not surprised.
No, you better be surprised.
Not.
You better be.
Yep. Well, you know, it's crazy.
No, you better be.
I'm tired of being.
All right. Well, maybe we should go to some music because I've just been ranting about all kinds of. Unless you want to talk. I mean, I don't understand. Like, we're getting weed, we're getting hemp, but the city's in debt, and it's probably they're gonna not be able to pay off firefighters. The mayor's pushing to 5G. We're in a smart city almost. It's coming on its way. Meanwhile, there's people saying I can't criticize anybody. I mean, what is going on?
Well, we got another one here in Houston. A person that was on death row for almost 10 years that was recently exonerated. Turns out they found out that the prosecutor had engaged in professional misconduct in relation to some phone records and an alibi that supposedly proved the individual was absolutely innocent. Another person who spent a decade with everybody thinking they were a thief, or a murderer, and having to live in an environment where you do anything wrong, you can be beat, you can get worse penalties, all this stuff. Another one of those. And guess what? If there was any lawsuit about it, like in the one that we just talked about last week, where the guy did 38 years falsely. And got $140 per day. If there's any lawsuit, that isn't just coming off the extra plants grown by the prison farm. I mean, really. So, yeah. So Kim Ogg helped do that. So that was pretty cool. Just a little local thing I had from earlier. And gets a little bit further. And another thing that's happened is then they're saying that the Harris County will no longer have to outsource prisoners to other counties. Turns out that they are going to go ahead and renew the contract with Fort Bend County for a little bit longer. Right now they're paying almost $878,000 to house 43 inmates at the Fort Bend County Jail. I guess that's about $21,000 each or so. And so they got this new jail that will host hundreds of inmates, and we'll see how that goes. He expects not to have to do it again, but, they wanted to have one more time just in case things go crazy and they have to arrest a lot of people. So that's happening too. Music. All right, we got music. We can do that.
We got lots of important stuff to talk about when we come back, including your calls. We got new music to play. Micah said we got new CDs, so stay tuned. This is Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston.
to Japan before I'm a head case and get stuck in this town. Everything is finite, everyone gets erased, so I'm leveraging my time. If we can disappear, then we'll be fine. I'm gonna take you for a ride, before they take you for a ride. I'm gonna take you for a ride, before they take you for a ride. I'm
All right, Melba Culp going to be here this weekend along with Brett Newski during that break. Two radically different sounding individual artists at the same event at Dan Electro's this weekend.
And we would like to hear from you guys if you want to call in 713-526-8737. As you can see, we give you guys
a
chance to speak.
If you get out there's a number of articles about this Agenda 2030, It talks about the cost, and, some of the things I liked about the articles is it talks about some of, we like to think that we can all hold hands across the world and agree, that's kind of like the beautiful idea of the UN, like that they try to sell you, right? But, when you look at this, a lot of the countries that do cheer the like this Agenda 2030 are tyrannical regimes. So you got to kind of be curious about that a little bit.
I think at the end of the day, it's just more central control, centralization, central planning, right? And even if it's with the best of intentions, and honestly, it's like, whether you're talking about like
they're saying it'll
environmental
be $3 trillion to $5 trillion just on their plan.
Well, what I'm getting at is whether you're talking about environmental disasters or fears of global warming and things like that, people are at the point where literally, and this is one of the things that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or what everybody refers to as AOC, she has made quotes that say, the world's going to end in 10 years or 12 years if we don't stop it by 2030. But she's not, just making things up. The thing is, these are the studies that some people are putting together. Many of them, people who are promoting ideas like geoengineering, are saying that, like, if we don't do something in the next 12 years, by 2030, the world's going to be unlivable. It's all this cataclysm. And this is, of course, not the first time we've heard people say this. They've said this since the 60s and 70s when it was like a global cooling and just a number of different things. And some of the same people, I've written about this, some of the same people who are still around issuing these doomsday proclamations are the same people who've been issuing them since the 70s for the population bomb or the global cooling or the just different ways, right? And have been used to garner themselves more power. So some people are skeptical, but others are so afraid of what may be happening in the next 12 to 13 years, Micah, that they don't care what the cost may be or the force may be. Like, they're just like, no. And you see, like, the younger kids now who are kind of being taught that idea that, like, look, the adults aren't acting. It's time to use.
Mao said, with a sustained commitment from all countries, developed and developing alike, the world can ensure that it celebrates another great leap forward in 2030.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting things coming in 2030, maybe, and like the idea of the Agenda 2030 by the United Nations mandate, or not mandate, but kind of the study, that the idea that the states around the global states around the world could start to implement these ideas, and through things like the Green New Deal, which again, I saw a video of some junior high kids and high school kids kind of confronting Dianne Feinstein, who I'm no fan of myself, but it was interesting because she just kind of, these kids came up and they were like, we need you to act on the Green New Deal now. Otherwise, our generations won't survive, and like, we're going to die and this and that. And she's like, look, I hear you kids, but look, I've been involved. I've been reelected by the people. Whoever sent you here to use you as their prop, they can, tell them that. And they were like, we're here on our own. But really, it's like, this is the things that the kids are being taught, and not to say that they aren't steps we should take to work in more harmony with the planet. I see all kinds of people doing beautiful things with permaculture, doing things with just the way they're gardening, aquaponics, permaculture farms, local farms, but they're not using force or like taking people's money to make it happen. They're, it's coming in a voluntary fashion, a sort of ground up, action-oriented, solution-oriented, as opposed to like, let's use the force of government to take however many trillions of dollars away from people to implement a control system that's basically going to be just green fascism.
The last great leap forward between 58 and 63 resulted in the murder of an estimated 45 million Chinese who were worked, starved, or beaten to death. Lovely.
So
Obama said that is one of the smartest investments that we can make in our own future.
So I want to make it clear that, again, we don't think that it's a bad idea for people to start thinking about how they can take better care of the planet and themselves and living more in harmony with the systems, the ecosystems around us. But I think that the big fear here is that when you see the various people calling for these agendas and calling for this, their solutions are more control. It's not like, they don't mention, oh, by the way,
can't let a crisis go to waste.
The U.S. military is one of the biggest polluters on the planet because of all the bombing and just
Depleted uranium,
just
laser
everything
all
that the
kinds of
U.S.'s
things.
military is involved in. None
All
of
the
that's
militaries.
mentioned. None of that's mentioned.
Military in
The
general.
military budget is not up for
Like they're not
for
talking
discussion.
about that in this 2030 for all the countries, China, U.S., everybody to just
No, because militarism is a big part of the plan too, as well, and that's how you know that it's a
war is
sham.
big business.
It's a sham if they're not talking about intersecting the anti-war movement with the environmental movement. If they're not talking about that, then I think it's just missing a huge part of the discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's some interesting stuff, man. That's going on, yeah. But I definitely thank you to MOD for that call, talking about that. Gave us a little bit of time to talk about that, and we don't always really get into that issue because some of these people, you just hear about them so much in the mainstream. Like, it's like I'll check CNN.com every now and then just to see what they're talking about, what's being pushed in the mainstream in that world. But I don't really like to talk about it, because usually they're not talking about anything. If they're talking about something worth talking about, they're skewing it, and they're kind of giving you just some misdirection, misinformation, as opposed to looking at the deeper issues of anything. But more than likely, it's typically just what they want you to be looking at. Look at this hand. Don't pay attention to this one.
Yeah, this sounds kind of scary. This quote from Francis. I'm sorry to be in it still. Because, these things sound all good, right? But if you take them apart, take this quote, for example. We could even say that the good, if it is not the common good, is not actually good. What?
So if it's not for the common collective good, then it is not good. Lose your individuality.
Pretty calm, pretty scary. I don't know, it doesn't seem to be about the individual. It seems to be about control and everybody working together to be the same, whatever the hierarchy has chosen. So I don't know. Sounds scary. I don't want to talk about that anymore. Sorry. Yeah, because I got to do a lot of research on that. I do have go to a whole other area if you want to just talk about the, TSA for a minute, because we know we're going to have all these travelers during spring break, so probably expect to see some kind of craziness from them during that time. But did you know that they were responsible for protecting the pipelines? So there's 3 million miles of pipelines across the U.S., and I didn't know that was that's how it is with these bureaucracies. They make a bureaucracy, they give you an alphabet soup, and they stick all kinds of stuff in there, and then these people are in charge of, like, little decisions that affect all kinds of stuff. Like earlier today, you were talking about the FDA, was it, that's already ruled or whatever that you can't question 5G, and I can't question it on terms of health. So so you don't know what they pack under here. So 2.7 million miles of pipeline buried underground in remote and open terrain, and we'll see, because they're saying, well, we need more money to be able to do this, and who knows what they'll rattle in order to make more money. The TSA was actually short on cybersecurity expertise, they said, and needed more voluntary compliance that pipeline operators couldn't ignore, basically. And, they get all these terrorist threats. They say terrorists have threatened pipelines before. GAO report highlights instances where terror groups targeted pipelines for physical destruction in Colombia, Nigeria, Canada. Report shows that the U.S. law enforcement had identified in 2006 what appeared to be an al-Qaeda plan to blow up the Trans-Alaska pipeline, and arrested individuals for planning to blow up natural gas pipelines in Oklahoma and Texas. So, if you play around with pipeline, you might see some TSA agents and be like, why are those TSA agents here? GAO found that operators of at least 34 of the nation's top 100 pipelines deemed highest risk had not identified their most vulnerable and important facilities. The agency said the disparity may be because TSA's guideline did not spell exactly what constituted a critical facility. So, just the article goes on further. You can get into it on Freethinker Radio's Facebook page. Also want to remind you that we do have the HoustonFreethinkers.com, where you can engage in dialogue. I can't, but you can, and
You can if you create a free account.
I keep hearing these things.
Mike is afraid.
But,
all it's going to do is give you a verification email. That's it. Just do it.
I probably have to do that some of these days, one of these days, whatever. Oh, my goodness. Hey, I didn't get to talk about this, and I don't know how. Maybe I want to go to a break or get you to cover a story, because I want to get into the Mark Zuckerberg definition of privacy. I feel like that's relevant to a lot of stuff we've been talking about. And, as far as the Internet of Things, the whole living in a society of devices and
Yeah, I'm
apps.
down. You can go to song if you want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd like to
I'm
take a
down to
break
talk
first.
about that. I had an interesting conversation about that. We can get into that. Hear about Zuckerberg's excuse.
Let's hear
for
one of these
privacy.
CDs that got sent to us.
Yeah, so we have a little box here where people can leave stuff for us, like a note or a CD or just a pizza or whatever. And
Pizza.
yeah, if you wanted to leave a pizza in our box
or
here,
chocolate-covered
just
almonds.
come here with pizzas in your hand and say, "Hey, this is for Freethinker Radio," and it'll end up in our box next to CDs and flyers.
I will
and
say
things.
the number of CDs has been increasing. I got 3
That's
last
cool.
week and 3 this week.
So we got some new CDs. We're gonna play some of these artists, and that's just how we roll. So if you want to feature your music on Freethinker Radio here on 90.1 KPFT, send us some stuff. Put it under the pizzas inside the
Inside
box
the
for us.
pizzas.
Just tell them it's for us. Bring it with the pizzas. Whatever. It
Stop
doesn't
by
matter.
yourself.
Pizzas are cool. I'm just saying. And
There's all kinds of good stuff. See the station.
we'll play
show
music
around.
for you. But yeah, we're going to play some music and be right back here on Freethinker Radio 90.1 KPFT Houston.
At least that's what you said. But then you turned Judas. Your love went to my head. I had a glimpse of light once in my life. And now I'm stuck with these humans. I only wish for you to turn back. Back into my life, what we once had. I wanna feel again tonight. I whisper in your ear. We just lost track, so turn it back. That whisper in your ear. We just lost track, so turn it back. I'm talking about Eden. The apple trees are ripe. I'm starting to believe it. We were right by my side. I had a glimpse of light once in my life. Mama sang from Sweden. I'm begging you to stay. Oh, won't you turn back to me? You got me down on my knees. I whisper in your ear. We just lost track, so turn it back. Back into my life, what we once had. I wanna feel again tonight. I whisper in your ear. We just lost track, so turn it back. That whisper in your ear. We just lost track, so I turn my head to the clouds to get a glimpse of you. If you don't want me close, then I just don't know what to do. Here goes divinity. Here comes insanity. Hello. Hello till we meet again. Oh, won't you turn back to me? You got me down on my knees. I whisper in your ear. We lost our track, so turn it back. That whisper in your ear. We just lost track, so turn it back. That whisper in your ear. We just lost track, so.
All right, that was cool. What'd you think about that?
Archie and Pelago back.
Archie and how do you say it? Let me see.
Pelago.
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 Archie, and Pelago.
Yeah,
Back.
co-written with songwriter Ellen Bird. It's a single they have out, I guess. So I don't know, a little poppy.
That was
to my
pretty cool,
taste, but it
dancing.
had little,
It's like the kind of song that you dance to whenever you're alone at the house and you're either in your underwear or you're naked and you're like feeling like you're in the 80s and you just want to dance around.
Well, that makes sense because they say they use spiritual metaphors. intended to serve as allegories throughout the unfolding.
That was
love
my
story.
review. Okay, feel
I'm
free to
just
use
saying,
it.
that makes good sense. 'cause
Feel
they're
free to
not-
use it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would want to put that
this
on.
was new. We didn't know what it was. We just put it in there. We read it was popular.
Again, leave us
Boom.
CDs or pizzas in the box.
Yeah, and we
and
won't
go.
just eat a pizza. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna make sure it's legit.
Yeah, it's not-
but,
it's gonna-
we
it's
got
gotta be a
testing
good one.
equipment here.
All right, but anyways, let's get into some news. Micah said something about privacy, Facebook, something. Those two
That's
things do not compute.
malarkey because I was ready for more music, but we'll get into this story.
Let's get into things. You like
Yeah.
getting into stuff.
That's true. That's what we're here. We're here for you. 713-526-8737. And there's a little article that came out a couple of days back over there on MSN. But you can think what you want about the source. But I do think it creates. Actually, it's from Atlantic Media. I guess they just pirated some of it or something. I mean, lifted it up. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg published a post on March 6th outlining what he calls a privacy-focused vision for social networking. And why might this matter? Well, he's CEO of Facebook, and we've talked a lot about what some of the situations and the violations, and the perceived violations and the manipulations of Facebook, right? And obviously people put a lot of information on Facebook. It's almost like the new way to write a letter to for some people. And it's not so extensive in the U.S., but Derek's brought up the fact that in some countries it's the portal to the internet. And you buy a device and that's what it has, Facebook. That's kind of creepy. I'm sure they got some kind of special deal up in those countries. So anyway, it sounds nice that he's talking about privacy, right? A privacy-focused vision for social networking. It sounds like he might know what that word means, right? If he's using it. And he's probably not a dumb guy, right? I mean, he's rich. He runs a big company. Probably might have worked for the CIA. I mean, can't be too dumb, right? So all that sounds nice until you start thinking about his definition of privacy, because it's just, I don't know, I guess a little bit confusing. People's activities on the social network will no longer default to being viewable by everyone, Zuckerberg notes. Posts and messages will be ephemeral, meaning they can't be viewed months or years after the fact. How do you think about that, Derek? Think about how many times you've gone on there and looked back over your timeline to something that happened a decade or 8 years, 6 years ago.
Say the statement again. What is the?
They're saying Zuckerberg, so he's given these different things about like how it's going to be different. So first off, posts won't be viewable by everyone. Second off, posts and messages will be ephemeral, meaning by his term that they can't be viewed months or years after the fact. And every message sent on a Facebook service will be end-to-end encrypted, keeping it safe from hackers and overreaching governments. This is what he said.
What about the watchful eyes of Facebook?
It doesn't say much about that, but I don't see the point in this ephemeral, fading posts and messages that just disappear. Besides saving,
I don't buy that.
That sounds like a way of saving Facebook server space or something.
Well, because I know that as far back as 2013, for example, during the Silk Road trial against Ross Ulbricht, one of the pieces of evidence they brought to him was something that he started to type a status and he didn't even complete it, and it was a comment or something along those lines that got later deleted, and they were able to find it and bring it up into court. And we now know that even statuses that you've typed up and then deleted, Facebook records those as well. So I mean, it's hard for me to believe.
So type everything and delete it.
It's hard to believe that they just are deleting your messages when we know that they have a record. And you can download your Facebook file and your Google file, and you can see how much they have about you. Maybe they're changing that in the future.
Download it
We'll
and
see.
upload it. Download it and upload it. These examples provide an interesting picture of the future of Facebook, but they are not, examples of privacy. Do you think of these things as privacy? That that your code will be, that your messages will be encrypted, like you said. What's that do about Facebook? Looking at it. So obviously you don't think it's privacy, Derek. But what about these? What the heck does it matter that these posts are ephemeral and we don't really have privacy there? So let's see. Instead, what does this show us? That Zuck is basically aiming to make Facebook more private, the way you might refer to private party or private parts, while claiming that the company really cares about privacy. The two terms mean different things. You can see different definitions at work in the following paragraphs. In fact, let's see here. Let's see. Yeah, so we're going to skip this part real quick. I understand that many people don't think Facebook can or would even want to build this kind of privacy-focused platform because frankly, we don't currently have strong reputation for building privacy protective services, and we've historically focused on tools for more open sharing. But we've repeatedly shown that we can evolve to build the services that people really want, including in private messaging and stories. I believe the future of communication will increasingly shift to private encrypted services where people can be confident what they say to each other stays secure and their messages and content won't stick around forever. In the first use, private focused platform implies the technological internet definition. A privacy-focused platform sounds something like a messaging app, Signal, or the search engine DuckDuckGo. These services do not retain any data about individual user, and they prioritize user anonymity over nearly all concerns. But in the next paragraph, Zuck tries to casually swap in the term private in the generic sense of something that is not public, like a private company, private part, like Zuckerberg's home, which became extremely private after he bought adjacent lots that might offer views of his master bedroom. The post neglects to mention that a private Facebook is not mutually exclusive with one that is bad on privacy. As Zuckerberg freely admits, the company has been historically. He admits that they're bad on privacy through their history. Having photos disappear after a month doesn't mean Facebook won't use photos of you to train its facial recognition algorithms. Implementing end-to-end encryption does not mean Facebook won't use all kinds of other data sources to create a highly individualized profile of you and monetize it by selling it targeted ads based on those messages. The post ends with this sentiment. I believe we should be working towards a world where people can speak privately and live freely, knowing that their information will only be seen by who they want to see it and won't stick around forever. But if Zuckerberg's definition of privacy has nothing to say about ad targeting or empowering users to determine what happens to their data, that sentiment becomes their information will only be seen by who they want to see it and Facebook. After all, this is coming from the same company that when users gave it their phone numbers for two-factor login, used those numbers for ad targeting. So, you're getting spam likely? You might have wondered where it was coming from. Just might be from Face, keeping it private, right? Zuckerberg is a smart guy, and he surely knows the difference between private and privacy. The fact that he is willing to not make this distinction is awful telling, and if he runs for office, you should keep this in mind. So, hey, what do you think about all that, Derek? I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, I think it's interesting because I was having this conversation about Facebook and social media and the internet in general, and about 5G and the Internet of Things and the idea of privacy. And, excuse me, two ways that it seems like the loss of privacy argument goes is that either seeing the loss of privacy as a positive, that we're moving to a society where we won't need privacy because there will be transparency instead. And so other than maybe in your own personal home privacy, the world will be transparent in these different ways because, I guess, more live streaming, more interactive, more social reputation, more social credit. Of course, we get to the idea of the government in control of that, and that's where I get kind of freaked out because the guy presenting this is like somebody who I think is a bit of a utopian but believes in free communities, and he's like, no, I hope that blockchain and these different positive technologies will stay in the hands of the people and we'll end up seeing a more transparent world so that in some ways privacy is no longer necessary because there's more transparency and more openness with each other. And I said, well, I get that idea, but I mean, look at the direction we're going in and look at who's in control of this technology. It's definitely not going in the direction of transparency.
Privacy no longer necessary. That
Yeah.
one's kind of hard for me to ever even put my mind around.
Well, and this is why I countered with, that I think it's important that if you study historical evolutions, revolution, resistances, that one of the first things that tyrannical governments will do is work towards eliminating privacy. And whether that means they want to put a soldier in your home, well, they don't have to do that anymore. They just put a listening device in your home, or a Facebook in your home, or a Google Home, or an Alexa, or a whatever.
They don't. You do.
You do now these days, just like the telescreen that Winston talked about in 1984. You never knew when it wasn't listening, but the people have put it in their homes and other forms of surveillance that exist. But the point here is that that's the new form of a soldier in your home. That's the last privacy, right? So if you can't be free in your own home to think, to organize, to plan out ideas that maybe go against what the government or the corporations or the people or the oligarchy believe in, then you're not really free. If you can't even think and you can't even speak in private, if you choose to. If you choose to be open and more transparent, then yeah, that's a beautiful thing, and maybe technology will help that in some way. But if you choose to still reserve everything and keep it to yourself,
It's just
that's
that false
you're right.
dichotomy. You know, it's not like you have transparency on one end and privacy on another, because transparency, what does it apply to? Public things, right? I mean, to things like how government is ran, how the money's spent, etc. Not whether your child has an illness, that they could be mocked for. Like everything is not public, and the loss of privacy, like, I guess the main thing is I'm trying to say is, like, the ideas of transparency and the ideas of privacy, while it's convenient and in some sense makes sense to see them as opposite ends of the same spectrum, they're not always, because there's some things where the reason to keep privacy outweighs the reason for transparency. Like I said, public things have more of a need for transparency, how the budget's being spent, how the public things are being done. Of course, these are people who argue that, you have no need for privacy and we should inject the little microbots into your body by a mandatory vaccine.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. No.
Oh, there are 4 more cases of measles here in Houston.
What does that mean? Does that mean that I should be forced to get a measles shot?
Depends.
I'd like to hear your thoughts. 713-526-8737. Last Tuesday, there was a national hearing, a congressional hearing on vaccines and why there continues to be outbreaks. And Micah mentions measles. That's, of course, been the latest outbreak going on for a couple weeks or a month or so now. And in
5 measles in Harris. See, they're going up.
And in that hearing, Senator Rand Paul, he basically spoke out and said, hey, I vaccinate my kids, I vaccinate my family. I'm not here to kind of
my neighbors.
argue that, but he was saying that he thinks it's a scary time whenever people are calling for forced mandatory vaccinations. He quoted Benjamin Franklin. He just said that, I don't think it's within the spirit of the American story or the Constitution for force, especially when it comes to medical, that people should have choice. And then that he was countered by a Republican from Louisiana, I believe, I can't remember his name, who was saying the opposite, saying no, we should mandate this, we should force this. So you've got people in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party calling for forced mandatory vaccinations, and it's just for me, it's a scary time to be around.
Measles, though,
this
man.
is the conversation.
If one person has it, 9 out of 10 people around them will get it.
Yeah, it spreads very fast.
And they say 1 out of 4 of those will go to the hospital.
So what will happen whenever they declare, they send you a text message and say that now you must be vaccinated within the next 2 days, report to your local hospital, or if not, you're in violation of the law? I mean, I was actually talking about this recently and having this conversation with some people about, these kind of breaking points like that. I don't know, when we talk about mandatory vaccinations, or the conversation was also getting into cashless society, these kinds of ideas. What do you do if it becomes illegal to use cash and things like that? These are steps that I guess, would you choose to still live your life the way you're doing it? And hey, I'm not going to comply. I'm not getting vaccinated. I don't choose to. Or just
now I want to know about
buckle under that,
I want to look up the stats for the number of measles cases
in the U.S.
annually, or decades.
Well, yeah,
because it's been around for a long time. Measles,
Well, look into the like I said, the vaccine hearing that took place last week. It was the Help Committee.
I already looked into that.
And, I'm telling the audience,
No,
the
don't
people,
tell them
the
what to do.
listeners.
You can't tell them what
I'm just suggesting things. They don't have to do jack. Okay, Jack.
What do you think about it, though, Derek?
Jackson.
Let's just say, what
Jackson.
do you think about it? Because we do say that, often we'll get to a point where we say, the only way that maybe authorized force is to stop force, right? And so, yeah, I just think that if someone has measles around you, you should just go away. 9 out of 10 people near them should get away from them. Leave them. No,
Well,
but seriously,
I mean,
is there a point where maybe they're forcing you to be exposed to a disease?
Well,
You could just leave, though, right? Then you're
I've
not
seen
forced.
some different arguments for I honestly saw somebody say this, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sure some people will think this is insane, but I think makes sense to me. Again, just your thoughts. Someone was saying that they were trying to organize a measles party, a holistic measles party for I don't know, for their kids or for just people to. Let me see if I can find this comment. where's that? Basically, yeah, they're trying to find like a party. I'm researching how we can create medically supervised measles parties as an alternative, holistic alternative to mass vaccination. So I don't know. What do you think about that idea? Like,
What's that? Spread it around, get everybody sick?
like basically like getting some immunity to it by passing it around, I guess.
One
Like,
out of 4 has to go to the hospital, they said.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So it might
I'll
not
take
be
my
worth
chances
the
of
risk.
not getting either.
I'm not even getting it.
But yeah, I'm just playing. But no, I'm not just playing. Seriously, I believe in being well. And if someone
So you wouldn't come to a holistic,
No,
medically safe
didn't I just say if someone has
measles
it, get
party?
away from them?
All right, count Mike out for the
light.
measles party,
Love and light, y'all. But
but no measles party for Micah.
yeah, for sure. My computer's slowing down a little bit, so if you got another story, maybe we can get into it. But this thing is serious because I mean, like the whole world, the whole country's on fire with it. Little people here and there are like really incensed. You know, it's one of these things that they're using to claim, you know, that fake news and false reports have endangered people's lives. Look at these bold children who stood up and went against their parents' wishes and went ahead and got vaccinated. They're being lauded as heroes and stuff. You go against your parents' wishes any other time, and you know, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know what? Let's play some music. I got a couple
Okay,
stories, but
bring up
let's
some
groove
stuff
on
right
some
here.
music for if you got something cool.
Yeah, we're looking
if
at
not, let's play
4:30.
some So Soon the Truth again.
We'll
They're
get
always
into that
cool,
when we
man.
close.
They're always cool.
This act's on tour. They're going to be through here Wednesday. They're going to be playing with a former guest of Freethinker Radio, Mason Von Krayenberg.
yeah, man.
And so should be a lot of good. They got some 2 heavy bands and
Let's
then some
check it
post rock.
out.
So this is Howling Giant out of Nashville.
Let's check it out.
We go check it out. We'll check it out.
KPFT.
My back is to the setting sun. This place feels like some kind of hell. My transmission's dead.
righty. Welcome back to Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston on the HD2 dial. Thank you guys for tuning in. We've got about 20 more minutes with you guys. If you want to call in, you can call in at 713-526-8737. Call in for anything. It doesn't matter if you're in Houston or where you're at listening. We appreciate it. You can call in to talk about whatever's on your mind. We've talked about a lot of different things today.
As long as it's FCC compliant.
As long as it's FCC compliant. Watch your language, young
so you gotta
lady.
Be creative.
Be creative with the way you speak if you speak in dirty, okay? But I wanted to kind of cap off before we move on.
But the number of listeners, a certain percentage of them, based on the stats, should be speaking dirty.
Okay.
Should we say that? Or are thinking dirty? Something. Never mind, measles.
Okay, measles. Let's talk about measles. We'll wrap this story up before we move on to some other things. I know Mike has got some more things to talk about. I got maybe another
That's his
story
way of telling me to dig up some more
or
stuff.
two.
Got enough to keep us going.
I got another story or two that I can wax on, but I know there's other things. I just wanted to bring this up because somebody just showed me this morning, actually, and it's from February 26, 2019, so a couple weeks ago. And this is from the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. Maybe you've heard of them, AAPS.
Are they doctors?
They are Association of American Physicians and Surgeons.
I knew they were doctors.
And they put out a statement on federal vaccine mandates, which we were just talking about. The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, or HELP, that I mentioned earlier, that just met last Tuesday, about why vaccines are, why measles outbreaks are still taking place and what they can do. And as I said, Senator Rand Paul spoke against mandatory vaccines, and one of the senators spoke for it, and some other people spoke for it. Well, according to the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons, they do not support federal interference in medical decisions, including mandated vaccines. Quote, after being fully informed of the risks and benefits of a medical procedure, patients have the right to reject or accept that procedure. The regulation of medical practice is a state function, not a federal one. Governmental preemption of patients' or parents' decision about accepting drugs or other medical intervention is a serious intrusion into individual liberty, autonomy, and parental decisions about child rearing. A public health threat is the rationale for the policy on mandatory vaccines, but how much of a threat is required to justify forcing people to accept government-imposed risks? They go on to just discuss some interesting ideas about when government should have this power, and they do mention this, quote, vaccines are necessarily risky as recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court and by Congress. The Vaccine Injury Compensation Program has paid out some $4 billion in damages, and high hurdles must be surmounted to collect compensation. The damage may be so devastating that most people would prefer restored function to a multi-million-dollar damage award. And it goes on to say, quote, the smallpox vaccine is so dangerous that you can't get it now, despite the weaponization of smallpox. Rabies vaccines is given only after suspected exposure to a high-risk person such as veterinarians. The whole-cell pertussis vaccine was withdrawn from the U.S. market. The risk-benefit ratio varies with frequency and severity of disease, vaccine safety, and individual patient factors. These must be evaluated by patient and physician, not imposed by a government agency. And then they get into measles, and they give some important information here because this is what we're talking about. Measles is a much publicized threat used to push for mandates and is probably the worst threat among the vaccine-preventable illnesses because it is so highly contagious, as Micah mentioned. There are occasional outbreaks, generally starting with an infected individual coming from somewhere outside the U.S. The majority, but by no means all the people who catch the measles, have not been vaccinated. So let's listen to that again. The majority, but by no means all of the people who catch the measles have not been vaccinated.
There's a failure rate in vaccines, too. There's a failure rate in vaccines.
Almost all make a full recovery with robust lifelong immunity. The last measles death in the U.S. occurred in 2015, according to the CDC. Are potential measles complications including death in persons who cannot be vaccinated due to immune deficiency, a justification for revoking the rights of all Americans and establishing a precedent for still greater restrictions on our right to give or withhold consent to medical interventions? Clearly not. So they go on to discuss what they say there are issues that Congress must consider. Four things. Manufacturers are virtually immune from product liability, so the incentive to develop safer products is very diminished. So they want them to look into that. Congress must consider that there are enormous conflicts of interest involving lucrative relationships with vaccine purveyors. Research into possible vaccine adverse effects is being quashed, as is dissent by professionals. There are many theoretical mechanisms for adverse effects from vaccines, especially in children with developing brains and immune systems. And number 5, there's 5 things. Vaccines are neither 100% safe nor either 100% effective, nor are they only available means to control the spread of disease. And again, this is not coming from me. This is coming from the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, specifically signed Jane M. Orient, medical doctor, executive director of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, calling for them for doctors and for the government to not force vaccines on people. Interesting stuff. What do you think about that, Micah?
Yeah, good stuff. Because people are like, I see on Facebook. I don't get into this argument very much, but I see a lot of people who are just so convinced that they probably would be shocked that this recommendation has come out. They would probably call this. They would question it. Is this real?
Yeah, I'm sure it's
believe in it so much.
Not been without controversy, but I just thought it was worth sharing.
Yeah, that's a good one. I got some headlines, getting some more music later, too. But did you know Chelsea Manning was jailed for refusing to testify on WikiLeaks? Yep.
I did see that. Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, that's that. Former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning served 4 years in prison for leaking one of the biggest troves of classified documents in U.S. history, was sent to jail Friday for refusing to testify before a grand jury investigating WikiLeaks. U.S. District Judge Claude Hilton ordered Manning to jail for civil contempt of court after a brief hearing in federal court in Alexandria, in which Manning confirmed she has no intention of testifying. She told the judges she will accept whatever you bring upon me. Manning has said she objects to the secrecy of the grand jury process and already revealed everything she knows at her court-martial. She said prosecutors have granted her immunity for her testimony, which eliminates her ability to invoke her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. I will not participate in a secret process that I morally object to, particularly one that has been used to entrap and persecute activists for protected political speech, she said in a statement released after she was taken into custody. The judge said she will remain jailed until she testifies or until the grand jury concludes its work. Manning's lawyers have asked that she be sent to home confinement instead of the jail because of complications she faces. The judges said U.S. Marshals can handle her medical care. Prosecutor Tracy McCormick said the jail and the Marshals have assured the government that her needs can be met. Yep. Let's see. Anything else? Prison is a terrible place. Surprising. I don't see any purpose to incarcerate people, Manning said. Manning served 7 years of a 35-year military sentence for leaking a trove of military and diplomatic documents to the anti-secrecy website before then-President Barack Obama commuted her sentence. So, yeah, it goes on. We'll see what happens about that. I'm not sure.
Pretty crazy. I mean, I think that
you don't testify, you're going to jail.
Well, and like not only a grand jury is definitely like a way for the state to keep secrets, and we've seen that in all kinds of police cases and other cases, but this is part of the U.S. government, it seems like, trying to go after Julian Assange of WikiLeaks, who Chelsea Manning leaked the infamous video showing the U.S. military firing down from a helicopter and killing innocent people, including a Reuters journalist. That was leaked, and that led to her sentence of 35 years, of which she did 7. And, of course, WikiLeaks is the one that released and hosted that information. So the U.S. has long been trying to go after Julian Assange, and some people believe that this is related to this grand jury in general that they're trying to bring her into question about is related to WikiLeaks. And the U.S. has been putting pressure on Ecuador, the Ecuadorian government as well, to push him out of the embassy in the U.K. So, yeah, interesting stuff happening. Unfortunately, not very nice.
Yeah, I was reading these things from the Foundation for Economic Education regarding Venezuela. Some stats just to put it in perspective. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. While the U.S. is the top producer of oil, its total reserves represent a mere fraction, 10% of Venezuela's 300-plus billion barrels of oil. In Venezuela today, however, the monthly income is $8. That's the median, the median monthly income, $8. Okay, so $8 a month, yet a 2-pound bag of onions currently costs about $2. In 2016, the price of a gallon of gasoline in Venezuela was less than 1 cent per gallon. Roughly 90% of Venezuelans today live below the poverty line. In 1950, Venezuela ranked among the top 10 most prosperous nations in the world. Top 10 in the world. In 2018, inflation in Venezuela topped 1 million%. Think of that, just since 1950, going from one of the top 10 most prosperous nations in the world to a nation where your inflation is more than 1 million%. A bag of onions costs a quarter of a month's pay, median pay. Whew. Talk about, seeing society collapse around you. Economic projections show inflation is expected to hit 10 million% in 2019. In 1959, the Venezuelan GDP per capita was 10% higher than America's. As of June 2018, about 2.3 million people had immigrated from Venezuela following its economic collapse, or 13% of its population. When Hugo Chavez came to power in 1999, Venezuelan GDP per capita was 27% higher than the average in Latin America. A lot of stuff going on. I kind of like sometimes just seeing stats like that, because you can look at them over time and, start going, what happened? New Mexico governor is expected to expand gun background checks. No big surprise there, right? You know what I'm saying? At least it's not one of those ones where they want to disclose your social media account in order to buy a gun.
Yeah, that's coming up once we get the social credit thing. I got one more story that might be interesting to some of the audience because we're talking about, bigger issues here. We're talking about national, international issues. One of the international issues that you should be keeping your eye on because they're trying to pull a fast one on is Venezuela. The U.S. pushing more and more for their puppet, their man, the Western government's man, Guaido, into as interim president, and as the international community recognizes him and blames the current president, Nicolas Maduro, for all the problems in Venezuela, and blames the problems, which there are many, on Venezuela socialism, when they're really, there's also the results of U.S. interference and intervention and pro-war propaganda. Well, we have a good piece here. One is coming from The Intercept from Glenn Greenwald called New York Times Expose on the Lies About Burning Aid Trucks in Venezuela shows how U.S. government and media spread pro-war propaganda. And it's related to the February 23rd incident, you guys may recall, where there were videos showing U.S. or vehicles, trucks supposedly carrying humanitarian aid. Remember, it's always about humanitarian aid. It's never about oil or gold or money. Humanitarian aid trying to cross into Venezuela to be given to the people from the border of Colombia via the U.S. government, right? And this video claimed that there was evidence of the humanitarian aid trucks being burnt in Colombia near the Venezuelan border. U.S. officials, including Marco Rubio, John Bolton, who's been calling for war for 2 decades now, Mike Pompeo, and the head of USAID, Mark Green, used Twitter to spread the idea that it was trucks were set on fire by President Nicolas Maduro. And, they go on to quote how Marco Rubio is just saying this is a crime in international law and means anything, he must pay a high price for this. It's just they go straight to the internet. Here's John Bolton on Twitter. Mass thugs, civilians killed by live rounds. The burning of trucks carrying badly needed food and medicine. This has been Maduro's response to peaceful efforts to help Venezuelans. Countries that still recognize him should take note of what they are endorsing. And on and on and on, and use this, and The Intercept is basically just drawing attention to this is how real, actual fake news is spread. And the New York Times published just today as well, just yesterday talking about this, and they kind of even lamely admit that they were a part of it, that they were a part of pushing the initial narrative, and now they said, well, new video footage contradicts our initial belief that there was, this was being set on fire by Maduro's people, and there's a video that you can see showing somebody with a bottle and a rag, a Molotov cocktail, throwing this, and TV footage contradicts this claim now. So this has been a couple of weeks now, though, right? How many people typically follow up with the stories? And this is how the propaganda works. They blast it all over social media, all over the internet, and you gobble it up, and it gets locked into your brain, and you never see the correction, a couple weeks later, where they say, whoops, we made a mistake. Whoops, that was wrong. That wasn't actually what we told you. Similar to how just last week, the one of the international bodies that test chemical weapons released their report saying that they found no evidence of chemical weapons use by the Syrian government last April, right? But that's been a year now, so people aren't paying attention. People have moved on. In the same way, people already think Maduro is a violent person, and of course, we're not here to endorse any presidents or any leaders. We think that they're all probably up to no good at the end of the day, but don't buy the U.S. lies. Let Venezuela figure themselves out.
On February 25th, there was a Ron Paul Liberty report that went out, and I actually watched this one because I sometimes get news from other places, so I can follow it up. But I thought this Liberty report was interesting because I'd been following that aid, because I was kind of thinking, this whole aid that's getting sent down there, the way they announced it before it went and everything, it kind of, I was like, what's going to happen? It just like, it felt like something was going to happen, right? So I was watching this because it said Venezuela false flag, who burned the aid truck? And they get in there and they're talking, and it's just a show like ours or something, only maybe they have a little bit more listeners and supporters, but they're just examining the news basically that they have, and they've got video and photos basically showing people on the side where the aid trucks were that threw a firebomb into an aid truck. So I was like, huh? And they say we can't tell for sure, but look at this camera footage that came from somewhere else, and I was like, oh my goodness, really? So there can be something, people want to make it like these smaller outlets like that can't start reporting things or questioning things, or if it comes from there, it's not valid. But I thought that was interesting because I read that, like I said, on February 25th, and now it's, coming out into the light a little bit more.
And now the New York Times is admitting that, there's video footage that contradicts what we were saying. And basically the Intercept article we're winding down here was basically saying kind of what Micah called it, a false flag. They give examples of Gulf of Tonkin and other examples of times that we've been lied into a war, the Iraq war. I was just saying a moment ago about the Syria, talking about chemical weapons without very strong evidence and contradictory evidence even. This is just another push towards war, to getting you to support going into these other countries or endorsing your tax dollars going to overthrowing other governments and not letting them organize their own affairs and sanctioning them and intervening. And whether that means boots on the ground or something else, we'll see. But it's time for us to wake up to that and question it. I think that's all the time we got today, guys. We're going to leave you with some music, but we're here every Monday and Friday. You can tune in to hear the rest of our
So when will we be here again?
Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. on the FM dial. So you just go to kpft.org/listen, or if you're in Houston, just listen in on 90.1. And you can call in. We got a lot more active call-in show. This show, we get to talk a little bit more and share some of our thoughts. But we'd love to hear from you guys on Friday. Thanks for listening. We're going to go to some music. And until next time, you've been listening to Freethinker Radio. Remember, you can be free. If you want to be, you can live free, you can think free, and you can be free. Peace.
Open eyes can't stay.